Strike King Pro Mark Menendez here with you, and you know, Rattle and Hum, one of my favorite old albums of years ago. Boy, that album plays good, especially in the springtime. A Red Eyed Shad, man, do I catch a lot of fish with it. We're going to talk about several ways to fish that bait in the early spring and through the season. You know, a lipless crankbait is one in which we've used for years, but the Red Eyed Shad possesses several different entities about it that are just unique to itself. One is the way the bait falls. The bait falls this way instead of a head down position. That non-natural fall gets me a lot of strikes, especially when I rip it up out of cover. It hesitates and it falls just like this. They bite it on that fall, head first most of the time. I can burn this bait with speed up high in the water column. I can reel it real slow on the bottom. Multiple sizes and actual multiple sounds makes this bait one that an angler can get really experimental with to find the bite of the day. Finding that bite of the day is what I have to do every day. My first initial retrieves, I really like to fish this thing in the early spring, especially around emergent grass. Grasses that are coming up out of the bottom that haven't gotten to the surface, looking for inside grass lines or outside grass lines. The key to any lipless bait is when I make that cast, let the bait fall into the grass and rip it out of that grass. That rip and fall, that rattling it up, is how you get that bite. Any crankbait, you have to deflect it off the bottom. It has to hit and bounce and do anything erratic to get that strike. A lipless bait is a very tight wiggling bait and really not a prolific bait that is real attractive until it does something irregular. And getting it to the bottom, ripping it through cover, that lift and fall is that perfect deflection or that erratic type bite that you want to get those fish fired up. Multiple sizes through the year. As I start the spring, I generally grab my 1/2 ounce size. It's a good size. I can throw it a long distance. It falls fast. But if I'm on a lake that has bigger than average fish, Sam Rayburn, a Toledo Bend, a Gunnersville, a Seminole, an Okeechobee, I'll go to the 3/4 ounce size. That bigger profile, yet it's a heavier bait, that bigger profile really gets me a shot at catching some of those big bass, that kicker fish that I may need. Those lakes, I'm going to throw them all day long and get 4 to 6 of those big bites, and I'll look great in the standings. A 1/2 ounce size is the one I start with, and then the 1/4 ounce size I use a lot in the late fall, fishing extremely shallow in the backs of coves, ripping that thing back in the surface, fishing it around bait fish. That little bitty 1/4 ounce size, it can be deadly when in the right situation. Rods and reels with this are a complete system. I've found a rod that I've become very comfortable with using a lipless crankbait, the Red Eyed Shad, and this is a 5XD rod. Lew's 5XD cranking rod. What I need with this rod is a good tip, a strong midsection, but what I really want is a rod that's parabolic. The one negative to a lipless crankbait is they're easy for bass to throw when they jump. They're a heavy, compact bait. The bass gets leverage with it. It's a treble hook bait, and it comes off. When he comes up and jumps, the fish come off. Frequently, you get a lot of slashing type bites with this bait where they just run up there and they poke it with their nose or they slash at it, and so you don't get real good hookups on the fish a lot of times. That's where the rod really comes in. This rod's really forgiving. It allows me to make monster long casts, and then it has the strength that when I get it into that grass, I can rip that bait out of there. Lines, what kind of lines do I use? I use fluorocarbon lines most of the time, relatively heavy, 12, 15, 17, 20, but when in grass, using a lot of grass where I'm using that ripping technique, a 30-pound braid is a great way to go. Braid has zero stretch, and it allows me to rip that bait out of the grass so that I get more efficient casts more of the time. High-speed reels, anywhere from 6.8 to 1 to the new 9.5 to 1. I want that bait moving, but yet I need it where I can keep that bait just on top of the cover, so you may need to experiment with gear ratios on your reels. They come with great sharp hooks on this Strike King bait. Watch your hook points. When you're ripping it through cover, even grass, rocks, gravel, sand, you're going to damage those hook points at the end of the day. So I check my hook points a lot. After every fish catch, if one feels a little bit dull, I sit down and I take a spare hook and change it with the appropriate same size hook. Rattling them up in the spring. Great way to get them fired up. It's a great school bait in the summer when you get around bass, and then in the fall, venture to the back of the creek channels with those little small red-eyed shads. Red-eyed shads are gonna rattle you up some big ones, I guarantee it. Give these a try, and you're gonna catch more fish with a rattle in your hand.